hope to see you around town. And I think Chris might have a few words also.
Well, in addition to just always being present and plugged in and doing your homework before our meetings, Brian, so you're always well prepared. I just wanted to recognize you were part of our working group on the site civil package, the MEP package, and I still believe all the work you did on present and future value of Parkhurst and future use cases will actually live to see another day. I think the superintendent will agree with me. There's some hard decisions coming up with Parkhurst with regards to the master plan. So I'm hanging on to all that work that you did, and it was just a tremendous effort. So I really appreciate you being a part of the group, how committed you were, and just the positive attitude that you brought to this. And we'll miss you.
Definitely.
And
Thank you,
great
Brian.
experience working with you all, and I'm glad I'm being replaced by very capable hands. Nice to meet you, Brendan.
Thanks, Brian. Unfortunately, I don't think we've ever met, but sounds like you've done yeoman's work to get the Lynch project to the place it's in right now. So thank you. Thanks not only for me, but all the residents of town that don't really understand how this all works. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
And then Brendan Driscoll is going to come back on. And he's been on, what, 3 terms before, Brendan?
Yeah, I think I was on for about 12 years. And then we decided to make a move out of town for a short period of time. And unfortunately, I had to step away. And we've been back since, I guess we've been back in town for about 6 months. And again, I'm excited to be back. Really looking forward to contributing and getting to know those of you that I've never met before and work with you. And for those that I have known for quite some time, I look forward to working with you again and working on creating some great new space for the students of the town.
Hey, Frank, Geeta's stuck in the public realm right now. Can you elevate her?
I tried to, but she
may want to say goodbye to
you
Brian,
down.
and she'd say hi to Brendan too. I just got a text from her.
okay. I tried to do it earlier. She declined it. So, and I took it personally, so I didn't do it again.
I hope it wasn't me. I hope it wasn't me.
You're off to a good start,
All
Brad.
right, here she comes.
There she comes. Hey, Geeta, sorry about that. So while Geeta's sort of logging in, can I just say too, Jay, that this sort of rearrangement of the committee, this is a little bit of a game of musical chairs. So it's not the only announcement tonight. Jay and I will apologize publicly to Emily because we've been describing her as our alternate member for quite a while. So actually, Emily was most recently appointed by the select board. When she originally joined us, I think she was filling a term. The select board appoints a full seat at-large member. So Emily's actually not our alternate. She's a select board appointee. And Brendan, who is now with us, he is actually a moderator's appointment to the alternate seat. And that is a seat that's specifically for someone who either is a contractor or has construction management experience, as Emily had, but Brendan has it too. So Brendan's with us, kind of filling what's left of that seat. That seat runs to January of 26, actually. So really happy to have Brendan back with the band.
This would be a big help.
Apology is very unnecessary. I just want to say.
It's like getting a raise, Emily,
Is it?
big promotion.
Yeah, you get double what you were making before.
Oh,
I was
great.
going to ask.
Promotion, but no raise.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was a cost of living increase since I was last on the board, but it sounds like there have been no changes in the compensation package since I left.
We're offering profit sharing now, though. So,
Oh, great! That's great.
Well, Jay, would you like me to share the agenda?
Sure.
All right.
I actually have a conflict and need to drop, but thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks again,
Take
Brian.
care.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Brian.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, we'll get into, we have one set of meetings, correct, Don? For
Yeah, May 6th, May 6th.
May 6th. Has everyone had a chance? I sent back some minor items and I know they're incorporated.
They're incorporated, correct.
Does anyone make a motion?
Yeah, move to approve the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Mark. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. And we'll have to do a roll call. And we'll have a skip, Frank,
I,
and have we seen Lisa yet?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay, Lisa, are you all set with them?
Yes, I am.
All
Thanks.
right. Ryan is off. Todd,
I,
Geetha? Geetha? Right, we'll skip that for now. John?
Yes.
Okay. And is Colleen on? I don't see her. No, okay. And Chris, Mark, Richard,
I'm not staying because I wasn't present.
you weren't on that, right?
I
one?
wasn't on the May 6th.
Correct,
meeting.
sorry. Don
Yes.
and Emily,
I also wasn't there, so I guess I have to abstain.
yes, okay. Sorry
And
about that,
Jay-
thank you.
Jay, I just want to ask Gita real quick, maybe check your audio, check your microphone driver, because you're not shown on mute right now, but we cannot hear you. So you may have a hardware problem if you want to either disconnect or reconnect or what have you.
Okay, moving on, Springtown meeting update on Article 34 from Frank and Chris.
So everybody, I think, got a chance to look at the Article 34 presentation Jay sent. We had unanimous approval from town meeting on the high school gym reflooring and reconfiguration, which is great. Frank, you want to talk about the public meeting tomorrow?
sure. So we, as part of the process, we're gonna have a public meeting tomorrow. We've been announcing it since last week. It's 6:30 at the high school in the auditorium to start, and so people will run through the presentation, and then do an FAQ. Chris has got the, I don't know if we want to bring up the social media post if you have it, Chris, but that was a nice succinct way of showing it.
I have that. That's from slides. So that'll be in the auditorium. WinCam will be there to both broadcast and tape it, on demand. Reminding everybody, so TAP A is on board for this. Chris Blesson, who I think came and spoke to our committee on December 4th, as principal in charge. So yeah, he'll kind of present the concept, and we'll basically just get feedback from parents and athletes. This is a very short time frame. He's going to try to get to, basically a 50% CD set in as little as 6 weeks. Just want to remind everybody, our goal is to, let's see if I can pull that up real quick. Looks like I can. Yeah, I'll share this. So this was from the town meeting presentation. So we'll have that community meeting tomorrow. Our goal is to have bid documents by the end of June, contractor on board in July, and we'll start work in August. So the space will be unavailable to kids in the fall. So there's some operational impacts. And we're expecting that the floor itself would be done by November. There's other work, of course, going on in the space. And we'd have the whole project done by December in time for winter season. So we'll review that tomorrow.
Okay. Also, we are still looking to put together a working group for this project. We have
Right.
3 members, looking for 2 more, so we stay under a quorum, just to keep it simple. Just if you're interested, send me an email. And we don't have to discuss it now, but if you are interested in helping out on that, that'd be great. Like I said, we just want to keep it under a quorum so it moves smoothly. And I think that's it for the high school.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think we move
for the
on to SGH.
gym, right. Now
Yeah.
we'll move on to the concrete floor, and we have members from SGH here. So Jennifer Grubb, are you gonna do the presentation?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
Yeah, I'm pleased to be here. I just share my screen. All right. All right, I think I've done it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Looks good.
Excellent. So my name is Jenny Grubb. I'm a senior project manager with SGH, and we're an engineering consulting company that helps people fix sick buildings. You were called out to take a look at the first floor slab because of lifted and cracked tiles. And we found that the first floor slab is in overall good condition with localized areas of deterioration. And we're saying it's a small percentage. It's less than 0.6% of the footprint is deteriorated. The cracked and lifted floor tile is linked to deterioration of the top side of the slab. In the upper photo, you can see the lifted tile and the ripple of the reflection. And what was beneath it was deteriorated concrete and corroding reinforcement. From the underside of the slab, we saw isolated locations of deterioration, and we also saw widespread carbonation, which I'll touch upon further. Did an additional investigation in which we had a total of 6 tasks. The first one was to remove a large piece of concrete that was at risk of falling that we observed during our first survey. And we did a study of the grade beams. From our first survey, that we saw some things that made us want to look at it closer. So we had a closer visual survey and found they appear to be in good condition, and it's not something to be concerned about. We did additional carbonation testing of the upper floors, the second and third floor slabs, and found that the underside of those slabs are also carbonated, similar to what we found for the first floor slab. But there's not as much humidity in the upper floors as we do have exposed to the underside of the first floor slab. So we recommend surveying the underside of the upper floors when it's exposed as a part of other ongoing work that you're doing. We did an initial study of the standing water in the basement, of the water, particularly underneath the auditorium. And what we found that you're already doing pretty much what can be done to reduce the humidity. There was ventilation and drainage installed during the 2014 renovations, and there's not much more that can be done to reduce humidity. Measures could be taken to reduce the standing water, or could, for example, could install gravel to fill up the space so that you have a dry working surface. Task 5 and 6, we're coming up with a schematic design and an associated cost estimate. We estimate the cost to be a little over $1 million to implement both the concrete repairs and to apply a corrosion inhibitor to the underside of the first floor slab. The concrete repairs are a little under 400,000, we estimate, and we estimate 630,000 for the corrosion inhibitor. The corrosion inhibitor, as you see, is the larger piece, and that's what we want to talk about because there are alternate options. Now we are looking at the underside of the first floor slab because we saw widespread carbonation. Carbonation is when carbon dioxide reacts with the concrete and it results in a heightened risk of corrosion of reinforcement. So there's a possibility that while it is in overall good condition now, that corrosion of the reinforcement could be ongoing and there could be widespread deterioration in the future. We don't know the rate or the extent of the corrosion, but we could learn more over time and with further investigation. I apologize. There was another point that I wanted to say. When we talk about the risk of widespread deterioration, when you talk about risk, you want to know what is the likelihood of it occurring and what are the repercussions if it does occur. If this widespread deterioration does occur, it'll be costly concrete repairs that are very disruptive to the school. But what is the risk? What is the likelihood of it occurring? That we don't know, but we will know over time or with further investigation. So we have recommended 3 different options. First is applying a surface applied corrosion inhibitor. This is a material that you apply to the surface of the concrete. It seeps in and should migrate to the depth of the reinforcing. It provides a protective layer to the reinforcing to hinder corrosion. So this is a preventative measure and it would slow deterioration. It retards corrosion that's in already carbonated concrete and reduces future concrete repair expenditures. The downsides are that it is expensive. Both the initial 630,000 we estimate, plus periodic surveying to ensure that it's working. And as another downside, it will likely not slow the ongoing topside deterioration that you're monitoring as you monitor the lifted and cracked tile. Option 2 is periodic surveying. If you perform visual surveys of the underside of the slab approximately every 5 years, you'll learn the rate of deterioration as we see visually how the concrete deteriorates over time. A benefit of this is that if after 5 years there's more deterioration than what we would want or anticipate, then can reevaluate applying a corrosion inhibitor at that time. Conversely, if after 5 years you see that there's almost no deterioration, you can extend the time between your periodic surveys. Estimate that a visual survey would be about $17,000 per survey, and this is for underside visual survey only. A downside of this approach is that it does not prevent deterioration. At every survey, as you find deterioration, you will just be identified for repairs. And this pushes the cost of the concrete repair into the future. The third option is doing further investigation now. We could perform specialized corrosion testing to get a better understanding of the extent of corrosion and the rate of corrosion. This would allow us to possibly identify hotspots that maybe as a more practical approach to apply corrosion inhibitor in the areas that have a higher risk of corrosion and do visual surveying only in the areas that have the lower risk. We estimate it'd be approximately 50,000 in addition to the selective remediation approach. that's what I wanted to cover, and we're looking for your feedback on what approach to take for the underside of the first floor slab.
Okay, thank you. First question from Mark.
And Jennifer, thanks for the presentation. If you do further investigation now, it sounds like the intent of that is not only to identify hotspots and rate of corrosion in different places, but also if you were to implement something like the surface applied corrosion inhibitor, it's possible that it could be selectively applied just to areas that were at highest risk. Is that the idea?
Yes, and so to reduce the cost of the application.
Okay, Don, next.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for your presentation. Would it make sense to immediately start that $50,000 study before we implement any measures to really get our arms around things? You know, I'm just concerned about the amount of work that's going to have to be done every year to repair, what's damaged. And, we need to have an understanding of that for Pete Lawson at DPW for potential repair work that needs to be done.
It's the question at hand, I think, is do we do that?
Yeah.
Or do we recommend doing that?
Right.
Hey, Chris, and then Geetha.
So just with, in response to that question Don just had about timing and sequence and so forth. Option one, I mean, we're talking about a crawl space. I've seen lots of pictures. I haven't been down there. I don't know. Chris Conway, you're with us, right? I thought I saw him a moment ago. Chris, can you actually stand up in that space?
Some places coincidentally, I was actually working in that area that picture was taken in last week. Most of the places you can stand up in the cells, and you have to duck to go under every one of those beams.
Yeah. So I guess the comment that I would make is this committee back and the records bear this out, back in 2014, 2015, 2016 had conversations with Skanska and SMMA about moisture mitigation and about humidity in the space. It's a $129 million project, and it's intended to last generations. If it sounds from the reports and the information from Jenny that she's presented tonight and previously, that sounds like we have our highest humidity levels in the wing where the auditorium is. That's where we have the standing water. However, we've also had some pretty substantial flooring failure where the A wing meets the common. So when you walk into the building, you turn right. That's where we had that delamination. Chunk of concrete was coming down. The porcelain tile failed, and Chris and his team have already replaced it. And I haven't heard that is, at least comparatively speaking, such a high humidity area. And so just given that the whole crawl space under the building is relative to the occupied space, a higher humidity condition. My head, I have to say, immediately goes towards option one. Although it's the most expensive, it's the one that I think brings a little more assurance and can more reliably extend the life of the building and avoid those sort of really expensive topside repairs. And anyway, just to finish the thought, we don't have that kind of money in remaining in the building account. For a project like this, it would typically be summer work. So for major school projects in the summer, we typically fund it at fall town meeting. We just finished spring town meeting. So if there was an appetite to fund this work at fall town meeting, it would need to be part of our summer capital projects discussion, which is actually kicking off in just the next 2 or 3 weeks, which is partly why Jenny and Greg and the team had this timeline to bring this to us. So Don, to your point, I mean, whether it's $50,000 or $100,000 a pop, if this work were to be rolled into one project funding request, including the topside repairs, so the hallways that Chris has identified, the guidance department, I'm envisioning that as one package. It's one funding request, which, you know, it's $1 million of construction costs, so there's no escalation there. There's some soft costs that aren't there. So our working number would be a little higher than that, but that's how that would happen if that's the route that we wanted to go. We could seek funding from town meeting in the fall.
Hey, Geetha? You're on mute. Oh,
Okay,
we
can you
lost-
guys hear me now? So,
Yes.
all right. It's some echo, I'm in the computer. I guess what I'm trying to say, Jen and Chris, is how successful it would be in terms of going along the option one, knowing that we had to get down into the crawl space to take the approach of option one. Is it feasible, or is it something that we can assure that it could be applied successfully? And the other thought while I was reading the memo I had was in terms of nailing down as a, you know, I guess less than 1% percentage of the area of the deterioration, I would have liked to see, like, let's say building wings A through E, and what is the percentage of area was exposed, and then came to the conclusion the deterioration was in such a less area of percentage, just to revalidate that we can maybe take option one, or we have to immediately jump into option three, you know. And I guess another one I had in my thought, and I just kind of lost it. Maybe I'll revisit that, Jennifer, but that's what I was thinking while I was reading the option one. How successful would it be? Because the crawl space may not be accessible. So,
Well, we expected most of it to be accessible. Some portions of the underside of the slab are not accessible. They were judging that based upon what we found accessible to do our visual survey. And most of it is accessible. I can actually, I have some numbers, but forgive this detailed plan, but this is our cost estimate, and we broke it down into accessible areas and potentially inaccessible areas. So while there is a substantial area that we don't think is necessarily accessible, we included it in our estimate to assume that it could be done. But the vast majority we do believe is accessible and that it'll work.
I see. Maybe the thought that I was thinking, maybe I'll ask this one. I guess in the report it says the deterioration was found in all flows, maybe to the same extent. So how can we pursue as if moisture is the cause for the deterioration in flow one? In other words, when I was reading, I understood as all the flows showed the same amount of deterioration, but still we are chasing the moisture. Is there any other factor causing this too? So.
Well, I want to differentiate between carbonation and deterioration.
Okay.
Carbonated concrete that is not deteriorated. So this photo here, the concrete is in good condition, but we know that the underside is carbonated. When we're talking about deterioration, we're more talking about what's shown in this photo. And we did not do a full condition assessment of the upper floors. We just did carbonation testing of the upper floors, but we learned about the top side deterioration on the first floor from where the tile is lifted and cracked. And Chris Conway knows where this is occurring, and unless he corrects me, that hasn't been happening on the upper floors. So we don't expect to see the topside deterioration that we do see on the first floor.
Okay, all right.
The underside, we expect that because of the difference in humidity, we expect that the underside is performing better than the underside of the first floor slab. But we do recommend taking a look and doing a visual survey when the area is exposed during your other work.
Okay. All right, I'll just listen to the others now. Thank you.
Okay. Emily, you're up.
Hi, Jennifer. So I guess just the way that a lot of this has been worded, it sounds like for option one, it just sounds like it's a possibility that it would help. I guess just, is there a reality that maybe we spend $1 million, apply this stuff, and it doesn't help? Is there any,
well,
that might happen?
there are no absolutes, right? This will slow the corrosion, but it wouldn't completely stop the corrosion. So we're just being careful so that not to overstate what it can do. It's not I think it's effective. There's a possibility that it won't work, and we recommend doing a mock-up and determining whether it will successfully penetrate to the depth of the reinforcement. But that's the first step before applying it, to verify that it can reach the reinforcement. Once we verify that it can reach the reinforcement, it's reasonable to assume that it will slow the deterioration and slow the corrosion that's happening. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it just, I mean, I guess these days $1 million isn't a lot, but it is, to me, it feels like a lot for something that might not help.
Right.
And I guess I'm also struggling a little bit to hear like a mock-up of something like this. Like, I guess you really wouldn't know for years and years and years. And then at that point, we're pretty far down the road of even more deterioration.
Speaking of, is where it might not work is that if it does not have when you apply it to the surface, it slowly seeps into the concrete. We want it to seep deep enough to reach the steel reinforcement so that it can react and provide its protective layer. But sometimes this surface applied material does not penetrate deep enough to reach the reinforcement. And that's what the mock-up would be, to test how deeply the material penetrates. And that would be, depending upon manufacturer recommendation, like a 30-day mock-up, not a 3-year mock-up.
And is it the nature of the concrete that doesn't allow it to maybe seep all the way in? Or I guess what would prevent this stuff from seeping deep enough to the reinforcement?
It's the nature of the concrete. It's the permeability of the concrete. But the depth of carbonation suggests that it's a permeable concrete, and that the corrosion inhibitor would likely penetrate to the depth of the reinforcement and will likely work.
Okay. So I guess we're also assuming that the concrete is pretty uniform.
Yeah.
Which hopefully is true, but I guess you never really know. Okay, I think you answered all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mark is next, Chris, Todd, and Peter.
So Jenny, the corrosion inhibitor applied to the underside, that's going to get to the reinforcing in the beams and maybe some of the lower reinforcing reinforcing in the slabs. The topside deterioration that has been identified, that is on the top reinforcing.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that none of the corrosion inhibitor would reach that. Is this falling and corrosion that's observed on the top side directly related to carbonation of the concrete, or do you believe it's some other cause that's separate?
It is separate. Well, what is separate is looking at the top side versus the underside. Deterioration, the deleterious actors, salt, carbon dioxide, these generally come from the outside in. So we're looking from the top side down and from the underside up as to what this is occurring. So what we've been talking about is that there's widespread carbonation on the underside of the slab. There is not widespread carbonation on the top side of the slab. On the top side of the slab, we found an area of carbonation in building E. Hold on a moment. So this hallway here in E is where repairs were made 2 or so years ago. And in this area, we took a concrete sample and found the top side was carbonated as well in this location. I'm happy to go into my theory as to why it's carbonated, but that's what we believe is the cause of deterioration in this hallway. In building, this is D, I believe. In this hallway, we did not find carbonation on the top side, but we found fluorides, salts on the top side of the concrete. We don't know where the salts came from, but fluorides lead to corrosion of reinforcement. So happening on the top side is sort of separate from what's happening on the underside.
Got it. So it sounds like the proposals that you've outlined here are to address future potential corrosion, potentially significant corrosion that would start on the underside of the slab. So that's a future problem. And then there's the now problem, which is the top side falling in corrosion in at least 2, I guess it's 3 areas, right? 2 bigger areas in 1 tiny area that require remedial work. For the remedial work on the top side, what provisions have to be taken, I guess, A, to prevent that from continuing further? And in addition, is there any way to know whether or not this problem will continue to expand and spread to different areas? I do note that south of that corridor, or page south of that corridor, there is an area starting to show VCT cracking, but nothing raised yet.
Oh, this note here?
So
yeah.
that's a many-part question. But
yeah. Well, as for the top side, the concrete that hasn't been, yes, we expect the deterioration to continue to occur until such time that it's the area is repaired. And it's something that should anticipate as an ongoing maintenance item. That you'll be monitoring for this with Chris knowing where the tile is lifted or where there's bumps in the carpet. There is when you do the repair, we replace the existing concrete with very good, robust repair material that hinders corrosion and preserves the life of the concrete in that area. But outside of those areas, there's not that much that can be done to prevent the continued deterioration without removing not just the carpet and the tile, but there's also a concrete topping below the carpet on top of the structural slab. So that would be, we would say, an overly extensive amount of work to prevent this ongoing maintenance. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. But so it does sound like to me, the assessment suggests that the corrosion, some combination of or choice of one of these three options will help us delay or prevent potentially really bad, really disruptive long-term problem. But that the short-term topside problem is one that we should probably expect to be ongoing. Well, maybe forever, right?
Yes. Greg, do you want to chime in here?
I think on the top side, where a program is going to be implemented to remove and replace tile, where we're seeing damage, is that in that replacement area, we would do preventive repairs to the concrete that's left behind to slow the rate of future deterioration of that reinforcement. So it's a one and done repair and not something that you'd expect to have to come back to in 5 to 10 years. So
It just might pop up somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, and we know the concrete's carbonated. We have some areas with some salts in it. You really need moisture drive once the concrete is carbonated or chloride contaminated to have corrosion. So on the underside, there is another option to coat the concrete to keep the moisture out. But that's, what is that, 5 times the value of the corrosion inhibitor. So we're trying to provide the best options financially that are going to provide long-term durability to what's left behind. So 2 different options, the corrosion inhibitor to protect the underside, and then where tile or carpet or VCT is removed and replaced, there's a repair program that will slow the rate of reinforcement corrosion on the top side locally instead of globally.
Just an admixture or something in the
It's a
concrete?
coating. It's
Okay.
a coating, another clear corrosion inhibitor or a coating. Something with
Thanks.
some thickness to it.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris?
Yeah,
Are you all
just-
set, Mike? You're set, okay. Chris?
So I guess just 3 quick thoughts with respect to the topside corrosion. I think Jenny, you were the one who mentioned this a couple of months ago, that in the 60s and 70s, when this building was designed and built, I guess there was much less awareness in building science about fluorides in a number of building products. It's entirely possible that even the adhesives they were using for the VCT, right, there could have been, when the building was originally built, there could have been salts introduced back in 1970. Whereas originally I was wondering, do we need to test the water? Do we have like fluorides in the water at the lower level of the high school, and we need to start sampling water from hose bibs? So we don't really know where it came from, but my understanding from your initial report, months ago, was that like in a lab, you've been pretty well able to determine it's that fluoride is the culprit on the top side. To the point you made about more investigation when you open things up, and I think this is a note, Jay, on our agenda for tonight. I did just want to share with the committee that Jenny and Greg have suggested when we go forward on the high school gym project, that when the rubber floor comes up and the concrete will be exposed, we'll have SGH come in and sound that area, just like they did some of the hallways in the high school. because it's exposed and that's the best opportunity to do it. And if they find something, if an area indicates that it's delaminated, then we would address that specific area with their specific recommendations out of the contingency for the project. And then Jenny, I wanted to ask back to the mock-up idea. I mean, obviously we're talking to Emily's point, we're assuming the concrete is sort of consistent throughout the project. So we're not talking about mixing up concrete, pouring it somewhere and then applying this product. Would you recommend one or two areas under the first floor slab that you'd be treating, and then you come back like with a core sample, and you're coring it and testing it to try to find that penetration of this product? And is this a 10 by 10 area? Is it 20 by 20? Like, how does that, maybe just explain that a little bit more? Because obviously there'd be some cost to doing that and then some lab testing.
Yes, you're right. There is some cost associated with that. And as for the area, whether it be 10 foot by 10 foot or 20 foot by 20 foot, I'm not sure. We would need to coordinate with the manufacturer and make sure we're in accord with their recommendations. But something on that scale would be appropriate, and we'd be applying it to the underside, not to a newly cast concrete sample. It would be to the existing underside, and then yes, take a concrete core sample and send it to the lab to determine how far the material penetrated.
And did you say earlier it's 30 days is sort of what you're looking for at least most of the penetration? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm asking because if this is something that the committee is interested in doing, it sounds like this is, we could take this on, in June, perhaps, have some results in July, perhaps, and then have maybe a little more data, more confidence about its penetration into the concrete that we have. Again, if the committee wants to go that route, and I bring that up only because I believe Dr. Hackett and I will be meeting with Capital towards the end of July, representing, district priorities for capital projects. So having that kind of information would be helpful. Again, if the committee has interest in kicking option one further down the line a little bit.
Okay. Todd?
So I have a couple questions. If we do option one, does that mean that we do not need to do option three? And also, is humidity really the cause of the problem besides the salts? If we reduced humidity on the top side, would that help? Would that slow or stop deterioration? And is this really an HVAC deficiency? And is there anything we can do to the basement underneath to reduce humidity?
For reducing humidity in the basement, we looked into that, and there isn't much that can be done to reduce the humidity past what was already done. From the top side, don't know what the exact source of the moisture is. It may be the small amount of moisture that comes from when they clean the floor. I know from what Chris has described that when they clean the floor, there's no standing water. It's put down and removed in the same process. But that's our best guess is where the moisture for the top side is coming from. And could you repeat your first question, please?
If we do option one, is option three not necessary?
Yeah, no, option three is not necessary doing the detailed investigation. We propose option three as potentially instead of the more costly option one.
Thank you.
Or a combination of the two.
Yes.
If we were to make a decision to focus the application of the corrosion inhibitor in those locations where option 3 found that there were hotspots, then you could do option 1 and option 3 in combination. But at this point, it's either option 1 or option 3, but you could do option 3 first, find the hotspots, and then implement option 1 at a reduced scope, potentially. And just to follow up on a question, you can't have corrosion of the reinforcement without moisture. So there has to be a moisture source. The logical moisture source is the crawl space, because we know we have carbonated concrete upstairs, but no evidence of deterioration upstairs in level 2 and 3. And you do have moisture drive that will find its way from the bottom of the slab to the top of the slab, especially when you have VCT tiles, which are a moisture block from any moisture that comes up through the slab from below.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
Peter's been waiting. Peter, you got a question?
Sorry, I'm good now. Mine was answered.
Okay. Then Geether, and then back to Mark.
All right. I just have a quick question, Jennifer. The option 1, how it's being shown, it's being applied like an open space. Just curious, when we get down to the crawl space, what kind of PPE would it be needed, or just wondering, is it applied in a closed crawl space environment? And I'll also ask the other question and then you may answer. I guess option 3, you just put only 50K against it if you need to do. I would, in my view, I would elevate that because it would give some benefits right away for option 1, identifying the hotspot. So I guess is that 50K is not in the budget, or is there required time that it's pushing it in the line back, not giving priority right away? So.
To your first question about can it be implied in closed spaces? I believe so. I do not know what the PPE requirements would be exactly. That's something we would need to coordinate with the manufacturer.
So then how do you know that it's a feasible solution? Just curious.
I discussed it with generally with manufacturers, and this is one of the solutions that we came up with from our discussion. So they know that it is being applied in a basement, but we didn't talk about PPE.
And no VOCs.
I see.
These are all friendly products that can be
Okay.
installed indoors.
Okay. And I guess the question of weighing in option 3, considering it may give more benefits to option 1, why can't we consider it ahead of option 1? So.
Is that question to me?
I think that's our question, Geether, and we'll
Okay.
probably, after these questions, we'll take it up and
Okay.
see if we want to move on it now or what we want to do.
Okay.
So let's get through we still have Mark and then Lisa to go too. Mark?
I've already asked a bunch of questions. Lisa, if you want to go ahead. Oh, wait.
I just have a quick thing, Mark. What I think how you need to proceed, and I'm thinking as far as how capital planning is sometimes, I think we should go with option 3 for make sure the evaluation is done. We know it's done, but I think having that information would be good. And then I think after that, once you meet them, say sometime in the summertime and then going towards the fall, then I think we'd have enough data to go to town hall to do option 1, which I think is really important. But I do think we need more data in that area, because I am concerned that I'd rather we look into it more, get more data in with it, so that when we make these repairs, they're going to be hopefully for the long term. Okay, that's it, guys. Sorry.
Thank you.
Jenny, can you pull up your slide that has all 3 options on it, just so everybody can see it? Thank you.
Hey, Mark.
Jenny and Greg, just to follow up on Todd's question earlier about, hey, is this potentially like an MEP question or a humidity management question? Would it have been possible as an option to lay down a vapor retarder on the rat slab or the dirt of the crawl space, tape it tight, and then use that if there is ventilation up above to eliminate or vastly reduce the humidity and therefore reduce the amount that's getting to that carbonated concrete? Or, well, I guess, is that feasible? And two, is it cost effective compared to just applying the corrosion inhibitor?
Greg? do you-
Yeah, I think we did talk about it. I think if you were to cover the soil so that it's covered, you need to add gravel to the top of it because it is a working surface down there. And we'd need to get rid of some of the locations with ponded water. We did talk about that, and we think it's groundwater, so there's no way to change the groundwater table.
Right.
And the cost would probably be comparable to, now, we didn't estimate it. I'm just spitballing here about the cost to do that. It's probably comparable to the corrosion inhibitor.
And I mean, hearing Chris Conway saying that he was down there doing some work recently tells me also that people are down there doing
Yeah.
stuff. And I don't love the idea of laying down some stego wrap and then having a bunch of people tromping over top of
Right,
it, because they'll
right.
just tear it open and then it won't be a vapor retarder anymore anyway.
Correct. So you'd need a walking surface.
Okay, and then last question, I hope, is it sounds like if we were to consider option one, the first thing that we would do is do a mock-up.
Correct.
Yes.
And that feels like something that actually we kind of need to know the answer to anyway. Because if the corrosion inhibitor doesn't work, for whatever reason it doesn't absorb, we would want to know that now, because we'd have to go immediately to another plan if that wasn't going to work, right?
Right.
Okay.
Todd?
Chris Conway, do we have any dehumidification equipment under the slab?
Humidification, no. Ventilation equipment, yeah. We have got a series of intakes and then exhaust fans. It's a pretty tough environment. It's certainly tough on the equipment. I think we've got in the area of about 10. I was scribbling some notes while we were all talking. We've replaced 5 motors down there, 5 exhaust fan motors, 3 relays, decent amount of actuators. It's a tough environment. It runs year round in the 90% humidity range all the time, year round. Even with the ventilation is somewhat limited. There's only short periods of time during the year that the ventilation can actually be used through the ventilation sequence. Once it's too cold outside, it doesn't come in because it would create cold surfaces down there, which would then condense. So when it's very humid out, it doesn't come out, it doesn't get used. And when it's very cold out, it doesn't get used. So there's only certain times of the year that it actually does ventilate. We stay on top of it the best we can. We've got 100% operation down there right now. But like I said, I've replaced, in the last year, I've replaced 5 motors on the exhaust fans just because it's a very tough environment on anything electrical. And all that's down there is the ventilation equipment and sump pumps. There's, obviously there's drain pipes too, but there's no equipment, there's no utilities. It's just all of that, but it's there, it works, but it's not a year-round solution. But even when it is operating, it does run in the 90% range pretty much all the time, somewhere in the 90s. Might get into the 88 every once in a while, but for the most part, it runs in the 90%.
Yeah, I would think that the ventilation down there in the summer is not going to be too useful.
Right. And same thing in the winter, in the dead of winter when it's, the only places, one of the questions Jenny had asked was about condensation. And typically the only place I see condensation down there is in the areas of the penetrations for the intake and exhaust where it's colder than the rest of the space. But in that area, we will get condensation definitely on the ductwork for the intake and exhaust, and sometimes in the concrete around it. But for the most part, we do not see condensation on the surfaces.
Thanks.
Hey, Chris?
So I wonder, Jay, if everybody's had a chance to ask the questions that they have. We don't need as a committee to be really voting on anything tonight. This was an opportunity to hear it really from Jenny and from Greg, and to ask questions. I think Mark Scott's points were well made. I think if knowing how this application may or may not be absorbed by the concrete is going to be really important for us to understand. And so I guess my suggestion would be, an observation, then a suggestion. There's no summer 2024 work going on in this high school. If we were going to do anything, whether it's underside or topside, it's likely going to be summer 25. And there's a timeline for that. Our town manager back in January and February, when she developed a whole list of capital projects and was certainly aware of not only this, but also the high school gymnasium, she actually carried a placeholder of $2 million. So I agree with Emily, $1 million is a lot of money. Hopefully it's the right side of 2 million, it's not 3. The 1 million's not project cost, but even with some project cost allowances, this is on the right side of that placeholder. I see a lot of value in understanding how the surface applied corrosion inhibitor may work at the high school. And I'm really interested in the idea of the mock-up. And I wonder if it makes sense, Jay, to ask Jenny and Greg if they could they perhaps make recommendations. I don't know, would you do an area in each of like 3 wings or something, whatever you think would be appropriate? Is there a way we might scope that out and we could get a cost for that? Right. And that might be something we could actually do, in June or July, and get that information to then kind of come back to this and figure out next steps. Depending on, I have no idea what the cost would be, but we might have money for that still in the high school budget. Does that seem reasonable?
I agree.
Is that Jenny and Greg? Is that something you guys would be able to do in reasonably sort of short order? Like little call out areas, scope out what it is you're looking for, and get a spec pulled together, and we can maybe get that done.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then basically you'd wait 30 days, you go back in and you just do another core sample, right? Bring it back to your lab. Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that would be very valuable. Sounds like to the committee to have that information.
Richard had his hand up first. You all set, Richard?
Yeah, I'm all set, Jay.
Okay.
Chris pretty much asked my question.
Okay,
I
then,
was thinking more in terms of maybe could the mock-up be added to option 3, but I think the idea of doing the mock-up separately, if the price is right, is a better way to go with that. Yeah.
right. Mark?
So, Greg and Jenny, we appreciate that you guys brought these different options to us. I'm curious to know, sorry to put you on the spot, but if you were the owner in this situation, what would you do?
Well, all 3, excuse me, are all reasonable and responsible options. I think we saw the price tag for the surface applied corrosion inhibitor, and that's why we wanted to provide different options, because it's a big price tag. And without, we say that there's a risk of widespread deterioration, but we don't know how likelihood that risk occurring is. My inclination, and I want to hear what Greg has to say, but my inclination would be to do further investigation to better understand the existing condition of the corrosion on the reinforcing bars that we can't visually see.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The more data we have, the more focused our recommendations can be. You know, we do have, you know, based on our underside survey, we do have deteriorated concrete in kind of isolated areas in that crawl space, in addition to the corridors that we're seeing on the top side. And we know there's a moisture source. We just can't pinpoint where it will occur next. And that's why we're saying corrosion inhibitor, slow the rate, the corrosion inhibitor changes the chemistry of the concrete and helps reduce future corrosion of rebar. And doing that everywhere would certainly slow the rate. But knowing more about where the hotspots are with some corrosion potential testing would be definitely beneficial. Definitely beneficial.
All right. Does that answer your question, Mark? Todd?
Yeah, I think we should eliminate option 2. I think that's just delaying the inevitable.
Okay.
I was going to ask that question to SDH. The option 2, are they all go together? Otherwise, it won't work. I wasn't sure. I wasn't ready to come to the conclusion that whether we can eliminate option 2, whether all should work together. Is that the recommendation?
Yeah, I think option 2 just kicks the can down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, things get more expensive as time goes on. So.
Okay. Chris Conway.
I just wanted to bring up one more thing too, and so that everybody's sort of on the same page with this. There's also an immediate need for flooring repairs in the E-building hallways, particularly door 15 hallway, which is right outside the wood shop, CAD lab, editing lab. That's an item that really, I think, needs to be dealt with this summer in some variety or another. This was the floor that was done about a little more than 2 years ago now, and was not done to the level that we did the guidance hallway to, because we didn't know at the time what the potential scope was and the impact. But I just want to make sure everybody's aware, and you know, as far as a funding source, et cetera. But that floor needs to be dealt with, really should be dealt with this summer. I think there was a desire to try to get to 2025, but I would definitely want to get some opinions from the school staff on that. The floor is degrading pretty rapidly. It's extended out from the pieces that were repaired last time. And I think that needs to stay on the radar too, that there is an immediate need for repairs, whether they're long-term repairs or whether they're just another short-term fix. But we are getting a walking surface hazard that does need to get dealt with.
Yeah, Chris, I should clarify, I didn't mean my earlier comments to say you shouldn't do any work this summer. I'm just saying that from the perspective of, you know, project funding for big projects. I mean, I realize DPW has a maintenance budget, so, you know, if you and Pete and Bob feel like you have the resources to do something on a short-term basis, you know, my sense is that's totally your call. But for big things that take money, all roads go through town meeting. And there's a timeline for that. So, you know, a capital project like this, whatever we ultimately decide to do, whether it's option one or it's a reduced version of option one, there's, as we all know, there's already quite a bit of topside repair that's necessary. Carpet's got to come up in the guidance department. The furniture gets moved out. There may be some partitions that come down in limited areas for that. It's the same kind of repair that we just saw in the guidance hallway last summer. And you've seen some of those photos where the carpet tile, the floor is swelling. It's almost touching the bottom of the door leaf in a swing. So that's got to be dealt with. The only issue is, my sense, Chris, is you guys don't have the resources to tackle anything like that this summer. But certainly there's time to make the case for funding to have it done in the summer of 25. But as a part of whatever else we envision associated with this project, right? Whether it's option one on the entirety of the first floor slab below, or 50%, or what have you. Jay, does it make sense to ask SGH to kind of come back with maybe an estimate of their time to, if the committee's interested in the mock-up idea, just to understand a little more about the efficacy of that?
I agree. It seems that was the consensus to do that. Let's see what's really involved.
Would they be able to give us clarification whether, when I was quickly reading it, as if like wing E, whether they would consider markup on all the wings, or just for some reason I noticed the building E, I didn't see much of a testing, the wing E, sorry.
Yeah, that was the question I asked Jenny. Was it's not clear to me if they would want to do like a mock-up under each of the wings, or a couple of mock-ups in one wing. I mean, I would just, unless they want to answer it now, I feel like I would defer to SGH on that.
Yeah, I would like some time to review that and consider.
Why don't we wait for them to come back with some prices on the mock-up and ideas, and we'll move on from this. Keep our meeting going tonight. Everyone, right? We're good with questions?
Yeah, thank you both very much.
All right. Yes, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Good night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Jenny.
All right, we're going to move on to the Lynch Elementary mock-up from and Mark, you were there, and Frank have some comments on that.
Sure. We had an opportunity to visit on site and take a look at a number of materials that were proposed for the visual mock-up. Among them, and probably the most pressing among them, was the color for the metal, which applies to the copings around the top of the building. It applies to some limited areas of metal panel below that, and it would apply to the windows and the curtain wall. So all of the metal on the building is the same color. And we looked at a range of different samples and ultimately settled on a sample that should be fairly consistent with what we've been looking at in renderings. I would call it a dark champagne color, sort of a warm gray, which has some cute name like bright stone gray or something. But that definitely felt like the best of the materials, because it matched very, very well in terms of its warmth with the brick, with the Arriscraft, which is that the whitish brick that you see on the right, and the Trespa, which is the wood look panels. So my understanding is that Taipei has given that direction to Braid, and they have gone to procure the materials for the windows specifically, but I believe also for any other little bits of metal that might be on the mock-up.
Yes, they have confirmed that they did that. So we're good on that. Thank you.
The pieces that aren't determined yet, but I believe we're going to get yet another preliminary set of mock-ups just on boards, will be for the mortar color for both the Arriscraft and for the brick. That decision has not been made. Taipei had some thoughts about a few that they thought might look good. Their Bray is going to mock up probably 3 to 5 different mortar colors on a big panel of brick, and then we can all come out and take a look at that when that has been prepared, and that will all be in advance of the full build out on the visual mock-up, which will be of the preferred recommended color.
Yes. Okay. Any questions for Mark?
So which grade did we finally go with, Mark? I mean, we see so many grades out there, just wondering.
Yes, there are many samples there on the board. The preferred gray is I think, well, it's hard to tell in this photograph. Chris, I think this was one of the ones you set up, right? So
Yeah, this was the day before.
Yep, our mock-up was a little different
Okay.
the day after. All the materials are on site, so if anyone does want to go look at what we should expect to see, Mark Krikorian has them in the trailer on site, along with glass samples and a mortar color palette. So if you are interested, you can go visit. They're very friendly. They don't bite.
I would just add the color that was ultimately chosen, you really got to look at it carefully in different lighting conditions. I played a trick on the superintendent because I took a picture with it against the brick at one angle and then just changed the angle by just 5 degrees, got a different color, changed by 5 degrees, got a different color. And it's really unique to that particular sample, that small piece. And I stopped the video only, but that video I was showing you is actually up on the Lynch Project website that just went up yesterday, showing May progress. And now for some reason that video is glitching, but there was a small kind of 3-inch by 3-inch square chip. That's what Brait was kind of encouraged. Well, they were hopeful we were going to pick because that's a standard color. But it really did. It was dark, but it had a lot of blue in it. Certainly under direct light. And it was harder to read that the day before, kind of when it was more overcast. So yeah, plenty of folks kind of looked at different days, different lighting conditions, and kind of feel comfortable with the direction that we're going. And there will be, as Mark said, there's more materials coming. We are going to have frit on this project, some fritted glass, like at the cafeteria and maybe a couple of other areas, but we haven't actually seen the samples of those yet either. And we're hopeful that we will be able to see that on the mock-up. So more samples coming for us to see in the trailer soon.
Frank is up next. Frank?
Yeah, Jay, I just want to let you know I've filed the paperwork with you for hazing because the tricks that were played on me by 2 professional architects, I think, were unfair with the whole, lighting thing. So I don't know whether you received that or not, but you should be getting that in the next day or 2.
When I went to look, they didn't even offer to bring it outside. So, but who am I, right?
I guess we can't just trust the architects in the group, huh, Jay?
That's what we needed. It's all their decision.
Yeah, right, yeah. It looks good, though. I love the coloring. I think it looks great.
Okay, move on. Any other questions? So we move on from the mock-up. We like Mark pointed out, we are still owed a full mock-up. So, and we should be seeing that soon. Payments. Well, I think we only have 2, right, from Meg?
Yeah, excuse me, there's only 2 tonight. The first is Harbor Cloud in the amount of $430.53, and then SG&H for $18,469.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Keith, okay,
How
Frank,
much money left? Oh, sorry.
we'll go through this and then answer that.
Okay.
Frank,
Aye.
Lisa,
Yes.
Todd,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and Emily.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Geetha, what was your question?
Curious, how much money left in that contract SGS? Is it 50,000 left in that? Or not?
I don't know, Geetha. If you send me an email tomorrow, I can look it up for you.
Yeah. I was like, whether we could nail the option 3 with that, that's all.
I don't believe so. I
Okay.
doubt it. I doubt
Okay.
it, but
Alright.
yeah, if you shoot me an email, I can look that up tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
We're looking for the next meetings on June 10th and the 17th. With all, Memorial Day, all the holidays going on and everything. And anything else from anyone before we adjourn? No, again, welcome Brendan to the group. Back, welcome back.
Welcome back, Brendan.
I feel like Don Corleone,
There you
Just when I
go.
thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Now I'm looking forward to working with everyone. I really am. I'm excited. So thank you.
Hey. Motion to adjourn for anyone?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thanks.
Lisa, okay, one last roll call for tonight. Frank?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Geetha?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye.
Mark? Okay. Richard?
Aye. Dios.
Don?
Aye.
Emily?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have
Night,
a great
everybody.
weekend.
Thank you.
See ya.
You too.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Good night.
Good night.